Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Radium and today I have another episode of Midas Prodigy for you, which will serve as the final episode on the series, honestly, which is kind of bad to say, because you must know how I feel about this series already, but for the final challenge of the series I'll be doing the Terminus event, which is great fun. Quite frankly, it's a boss rush with every single boss in Calamity mod, save for the old Duke. And all of them are super buffed. You have to defeat as many as possible, and it makes it a lot more difficult for me because I had to turn a new world into an arena to do this. I know this is a bit out of nowhere because I've got some gear I didn't have in the last episode, but I decided to skip straight to the boss rush for the sake of the action, and I don't want this series to drag on any longer than it has to. With that said, I'm not going to be explaining my strategies as such with this video. I'm just going to be rolling the gameplay and you guys can derive your own meaning from it, because this is not a viable way of doing the boss rush. My loadout is completely insane. As difficult as it seems, there's not as much skill involved as it would seem for this, I guess you could say. Surprisingly, doing Devourer of Gods was more rewarding than this, because that took skill and patience. This was just using the best possible stuff and doing it first try, which is a new recurring theme for late game bosses for me apparently. But it is good fun. It's just incredibly difficult anyways. I figured out what I was doing wrong, and the only issue in this entire run was Supreme Calamitous, unfortunately. Literally, I steamrolled the entire boss rush without even having to use my Godslayer ability, and then Supreme Calamitous would just go through, burn through my silver ability, and just get rid of everything else. It was insane. Apart from that though, there's literally 4 or 5 bosses in the entire run which propose me any sort of issues, and I'll go over those bosses when we reach them, and in the meantime I'm going to try and give valid commentary over these fights, as they will get a little bit boring just leaving them running for ages. In all honesty, I do use quite questionable tactics for some of them, and since I've been trying to eliminate cheesing bosses, it's kind of difficult for me to do stuff like what I just did to the Wall of Flesh, which was my no-hit tactic. And for some reason, bosses like the Hive Mind, Dragon Folly, and a bunch you've already seen just die before they even really get a chance to attack me, which means the boss rush most likely needs some more rebalancing. As some bosses have 20 million health, others have 2 million. And I know it's difficult to gauge this kind of thing, and it's really fun regardless. It's just very difficult, which isn't always a bad thing though. Anyways, so far this run was looking extremely good. Literally until Supreme Calamitous I don't see any issues at all, because the only issues with the run are just, well, lag for a start, because bosses like the Aquatic Scourge and Desert Scourge demand a loss of it due to Pierce, but also just dealing with the immense health of these bosses. It's not really an issue of skill all the way anymore, it's more just a test of patience, because this honestly takes so long. With that said though, I'm gonna explain what I did for this, as in my preparations, arena, weapons, that kind of stuff. So, obviously as I said, I started a new defiled world, for the sake of maximum possible mobility. I tried doing this in the other world, and because of the castle and the fact that it was a small world, there wasn't enough space in the sky, and I'd have to mine out some of the castle to deal with it, so I just decided to give it a miss and create a new world, which I think was a good idea in the first place anyways. So I've got 3 or 4 rows throughout the entire world, an asphalt row at the bottom which I very rarely use, but it's just to help me defeat certain bosses. I've got pretty much every single buff possible in all of the mods I have installed, so absolutely anything that can give me an advantage, as well as these weird candles from Calamity, which just give you minor little buffs. In terms of weaponry, I am using 4 main weapons with a 5th one that I don't use at all for this fight. The first weapon you'll be noticing a lot of my usage is the Dance of Light. This is an incredible weapon, there's no way around it. It fires these homing projectiles that follow all around your user, and they just do so much damage with various different effects. It's really useful, and since the buffing, they've really made this weapon a lot better. I really like it. The next weapon to mention is the Subsuming Vortex, my Supreme Calamitous weapon. It doesn't really hold its own anymore, but I put it there because it's good for very specific circumstances. Although it's very much outclassed by the new weapon, which you guys will see, Eternity. This is what I've been using for most of the boss rush, and quite frankly it just pinpoints the boss really well, and applies consistently incredible damage without me having to aim. Just wherever they are on the screen, it just obliterates them really. You'll see it here, for example. It doesn't matter how fast the enemy is, it will always hit for maximum damage. And that explosion at the end does so much damage. The last weapon I really use is the Vehemence. You guys will know this from last time. But what it does is it hits an enemy for an immense amount of damage, and as the enemy loses health, the weapon begins to do less damage. So what this means is that it's a very good weapon to start off a fight with, and then you want to switch to something else, which is most likely my Eternity or Dance of Light. The Subsuming Vortex just kinda lags behind, but it is to be expected since it's a pre-Supreme Calamitous weapon. The final option I had for this was the Staff of Blushing, which is a very, very unique magic weapon, which surrounds your player in fire basically, and these weird chain things. I don't think I use it in the entire event. Maybe I flicker it once or twice. I could not tell you for sure, but it's okay. Nothing spectacular, and since it's got very, very limited range, it's not really usable and doesn't really compete with stuff like the Eternity as well. With that said though, you're seeing me making very swift progress on the bosses. The boss rush can take a long time, but thanks to the Vehemence and Eternity just mowing down bosses, we're just making quick work of everything really. Making this as easy as it can be, basically. The Moonlord is actually the first boss which can arise some issues, but not necessarily because it's immensely difficult, but because there's so many things to dodge and they all do so much damage, that if you're unlucky, you can activate some of your Auric Tesla armor slots, or armor abilities I should be saying, sorry. But that's bad because it means that when the more precious fights come up, like the more important ones like Providence, Yorin, Supreme Calamitous, the DOG, all of those, you're not going to have the mandatory buffs that allow you to survive really, which is kind of a bummer, but you can't really do much about it. I'm also going to discuss my armor choice quickly. For those who don't know, there are two main armor sets for late game. After you defeat Supreme Calamitous and just before that. There is Auric Tesla and there is Demon Shade. Demon Shade is a set with one helmet and a single set of armor, 3 pieces. It gives amazing buffs for every class, I believe. But overall, people tend to stick with Auric Tesla. Despite being an earlier armor, people find it significantly more powerful. There's honestly not too much else to say about this battle. It's incredibly long, that's all there really is to it afterwards. And in all honesty, I kind of want to let the rest of the fight speak for itself. The spells, the weapons, the accessories, the buffs, the arena, all of it together make this possible. And a lot of people thought maybe I'd be able to do Yorin and Supreme Calamitous, but boss rush would be the end for me. And somehow I managed to find a way to do it without cheesing at all, which is just crazy to think about. With that said though, I hope you enjoy the remainder of these fights.